we need to transition, we need the finance to transition, and we need to finance the transition. So I think starting to get those roadmaps in place is really going to be critical.
What's WWF's sort of input into that? What do you need to make sure happens when those plans are being outlined?
So first, I think we believe that net zero claims themselves need to be credible. They need to be science-based. They need to have a 2030 halving emissions target, net zero by 2050. We need to see transparent, reported progress along the way against those targets, and that needs to play a part of the transition plan as well. So transition plans need to be credible because the organizations like WWF aren't going to believe it if there isn't some real science-based target and transparent reporting against progress on those transition plans. So our real contribution to that is adding in the what makes those credible.
And you sort of put out a call to action for finance firms quite recently. Have you had much feedback from that or much action out of that?
Yeah. That has gotten really good uptake with financial regulators in particular, and I think we've seen some conversations here over the last couple of days as well. I think for the first time just a couple of years ago, the Network for Greening the Financial Systems network of central banks and financial regulators was here at COP, and they're having a number of events. I think financial regulators see not just the financial systems implications of climate change, but the financial systems implication of biodiversity loss as well, and how biodiversity loss and climate change interact with each other. So they've been acting, I would say, quite quickly, and certainly relative to some of the policymakers and some of the broader discussions on implementation of the Paris Agreement, and that's really been great to see. So we've gotten a lot of really good engagement, in particular with regulators. We want to make sure that the benefits accrue where the resources are and from and where those assets are actually stewarded. And a lot of what has happened early on, especially in the carbon markets, but even more broadly, is this sort of forgetting of the people on the ground who live in nature, who have been stewarding nature for generations, literally. So I think that combination of how you make sure that you're having a positive nature impact, not just a positive climate impact, and you're having a positive impact on the people. Because otherwise, you're going to face reputational concerns with those. If the topic is credits or investments, you're going to face ultimately long-term social license to operate challenges.
If you're an investor in companies, say, how do you do an engagement with that company that maybe then has to do an engagement with a group that they've never had those conversations before? Where do you start?
Yeah, it's tough. You start from the ground. You start from the people and you start from the ground. So the closer you can get to where the activity is, where the asset is, the better you are able to identify who are the most relevant parties to bring to the table. And all of these conversations need a really diverse set of actors. I mean, we see it ourselves over the last couple of years. We as an environmental NGO have been included in a lot more conversations than we didn't used to be because financial institutions don't speak conservation organizations don't necessarily speak finance, groups on the ground don't understand what the global conversation is. The global conversation sometimes ignores what's happening on the ground, and ultimately on climate and biodiversity you also need multiple disciplines. So those conversations take a little bit longer. But ultimately they're deeper and the solutions that they find land better and they're more sustainable. So I'm going to give a concrete example. We are in partnership with the Dutch development organization FMO in a facility called the Dutch Fund for Climate and Development, and it's a €160 million financial facility. FMO, Climate Fund Managers, and WWF and SMB, which is a Dutch social NGO. And together, what we're trying to do is identify investments on the ground in nature for climate and for people that roll up into a real business model. So this combination of debt, equity, and grant to help spur the development of those projects, and then ultimately what FMO and Climate Fund Managers would like to do is extend that out to another $500 million of investment. getting all those parties together took quite a bit of time because we all speak different languages. Maybe we use the same words in different ways, or different words to say the same thing. But I think that that's ultimately how we're going to solve problems like climate change, like biodiversity loss, is bringing all these kind of different parties together.
Yeah, definitely, and that's really exciting. And I'm sure there's plenty of our audience who are sort of waiting for those solutions to become investable for them, as well. And it can only accelerate from here, right?
Well, sure, and there's a lot of discussions here about how you better blend finance, because we want to see, to your earlier question about what we really want to see on the COP, we want to see that $100 billion of development assistance delivered as promised. It's not going to be enough. We want to see a doubling of adaptation finance. We want to see adaptation finance become half of that climate finance. But that's public sector money, and it's not nearly enough to solve the problem. I've seen a range of estimates of what we need a year, $1 trillion, $4 trillion, and look at all the numbers. But the upshot of that is that public money is not going to be enough, and we need to first deliver it and then get better at mobilizing and using it to leverage the private finance that may come to the same solutions. And without examples like this DFCD, it's not the only, there are multiple kinds of testing like that. Without examples like that, we're not going to be able to get to the scale we need. Now we just need to get it at the pace that we need.